Resident Evil 6.
Hello there Internet, and welcome to this brand new RooView. I'm your host Roo, and today's game is going to be a doozy. You thought Resident Evil Revelations was confusing? Wait till you see Resident Evil 6. Before we take a look at the game's rich story, let's have a little chat about the game's history and basic gameplay. The development for Resident Evil 6 started shortly after the release of Resident Evil 5. With a staff of over 600 people, the game became Capcom's largest production yet. With Hiroyuki Kobayashi returning as the game's executive producer, it was off to a good start. Capcom had high ambitions. They wanted to blend together all the things the fans loved from the previous games: horror, action, captivating storytelling, and romance. Everything should find its place in Resident Evil 6. Capcom even released a downloadable demo version in late September 2012 and changed some mechanics according to the fans' feedback. And then the day finally came, October 2nd, 2012. Resident Evil 6 saw its worldwide release. The game received mixed reviews, with some people praising its storytelling and different themes, and others complaining about the game's departure from a straight survival horror setting. This somewhat became a meme for Resident Evil games now. Besides those complaints, the game sold over 8.7 million copies worldwide, making it Capcom's third best-selling game, right behind Resident Evil 5 and Street Fighter 2. Nowadays it moved back to 4th place to make room for Monster Hunter World. Just a little side fact. And I have to get this out of the way, since I'm sure you would be disappointed in me if I don't bring it up. Yes, I know, the number 6 in the game's logo does look like a giraffe getting a blowy. History and giraffe fellatio aside, let's take a look at Resident Evil 6's gameplay. A little bit like Resident Evil Revelations, Resident Evil 6's story was divided into 4 different campaigns. All of them feature their own main characters, telling the events of a global bioterrorism attack. Why do I bring up the story in the gameplay section? That's easy to explain, because you could say that the different chapters follow their own themes. While Leon's campaign orientates itself on the classic spooky survival horror mechanic, Chris's campaign follows a more action-packed route. Jake's campaign, don't worry, you will meet him later, is pretty much a blend of the previous two, and Ada Wong's campaign can be best compared to the Separate Ways mode in Resident Evil 4. But more on that once we get there. The basic gameplay didn't really change from Resident Evil Revelations 5 and 4, but a lot of smaller mechanics got an upgrade. The inventory is still live action, but less annoying this time around, since it's now faster to navigate. The green and red herbs are back too, but can now be mixed and loaded into pill holders, making it easier to access your healing items. And our beloved QTEs are back too. There are still the typical wiggle the stick in time and smash a certain button until your controller breaks sections, but this time around they added timed events. I don't really have any complaints about that. Some QTEs are even used to disarm enemies to attack them with their own weapons. Pretty cool stuff. The camera movement feels a lot more fluid in this game, and moving itself got some upgrades too. For example, your character can now run and slide under obstacles. Oh, and I almost forgot. For the first time in a Resident Evil game, players can collect skill points to spend them on special abilities. And even that's not all. The game even offers co-op play to enjoy the fabulous story with a friend or a stranger, whatever tickles your interest. There are also these little emotes in the game, allowing you to communicate with your co-op partner.
Nice.
Altogether, I'm confident in saying that it definitely shows that Capcom put a lot of time and effort into this game. Good job, guys. Well, that should have taken care of the gameplay. So let's move on to your favorite parts of these videos. Me trying to abridge a game's story and failing at it. Since this game lets you play through 4 different campaigns, all of them telling a different viewpoint on the same events, I will try to put them into a comprehensive form. If you want to play the game yourself, I recommend playing the campaigns in the now displayed order. I also had to divide this review into 2 parts to make it more digestible and easier to follow. Enough talking, let's start out with our old friend Chris Redfield. We join him in a little bar in Eastern Europe as he is having a great time drinking and fighting. Chris is approached by Piers Nevans, a BSAA agent and former comrade of him. But he doesn't recognize Piers. Turns out that Chris suffers from amnesia and he has no idea what happened to him. He doesn't even remember working for the BSAA. Well, he could always watch my reviews of the previous games to know what happened to him, just saying. Piers offers Chris to rejoin the BSAA to help him regain his memory, and Chris reluctantly agrees. Alright, now it's time for the action to start. It's June 30th, 2013, and the BSAA arrives in the Chinese province of Langxiang. They are here to save a bunch of UN workers from some really nasty terrorists. We quickly learn that those aren't ordinary terrorists. They are called Javo and enhance themselves with a new virus. We deal with the terrorists and their bullshit transformations and see that even though he lost his memory, Chris is still a badass. We eventually manage to save the hostages and Chris and Piers barely escape the building before it is bombed. Looking onto the ruins of the building and seeing the Javo's signature cocoons, Chris flashes back to the events leading to his memory loss. You wanna know what happened to him? I'm sure you do. Let me take you back half a year before the terror attack in China. It is Christmas Eve and Chris and his team are in the small European country of Edonia. Ah yes, Edonia. I think that's that little country right between Beerland and Pizza Country. Edonia is ravaged by a civil war and the BSAA is aiding the local army to fight the Edonian Liberation Army and their Javo forces. We now get to battle those forces ourselves and have no problem with fighting back the nasty dudes. And now it gets especially interesting. On our adventuresome quest for peace, we run into a familiar face, Sherry Birkin. That's right, little Sherry went through some developments.
Nice.
She's now working for the US National Security and is escorting a mercenary to get him safely out of the country. We don't know who that dude is yet, and he doesn't seem to like us very much.
Now he's under the protection of the US government. He's no threat to the BSAA.
Unless someone pays me to be.
The good guy he is, Chris agrees to help Sherry out, but there are a few problems. The helicopter coming to transport them is delayed by anti-aircraft turrets and this dude. We get rid of these obstacles and Sherry and her new friend take off in a aforementioned chopper. Don't worry, we will see them again pretty soon. Looking for survivors, we make haste to the town hall, but only find these strange cocoons there. Turns out that the Javo can use these things to transform into more bullshitty, powerful enemies. Chris and Piers take care of the freshly hatched big guys and find a sole survivor, Ada Wong. What is she doing here? She's here to tell us about the virus used by the Javo, the chrysalid virus, or C virus for short. Now this is a very nasty virus. Not only can its host transform its body at will, but the virus also lets the host regain most of its intelligence, allowing it to coordinate and strategize attacks. As I said, pretty nasty stuff. We decide to escort Ada to safety and she thanks us by trapping our comrades and turning them into monsters. Piers and Chris are the only ones able to escape the infection, but Chris is injured in the process. Coupled with the trauma of losing his comrades, this led to his amnesia. Well, that's that mystery solved, so let's take care of another one. How did Sherry end up in Edonia? To answer that question, let's take a look at Jake's campaign. Jake Mueller is a mercenary hired by the Edonian Liberation Army. While his comrades are juicing up with the C virus, turning them into Javo, Jake seems to be unaffected by the stuff. He still knows how to kick ass though. Sherry suddenly shows up at the mercenary's hideout, telling Jake that he is the only hope to save the world since he carries antibodies for the C virus. He agrees to help her and give her his blood for the meager sum of $50 million. What a bargain. For some reason, Ada Wong is there too, lurking in the background. Now we know what she was up to before killing Chris's comrades. Good to know. Anyhow, Jake and Sherry fight their way through the lines of Javo and make a new friend. This crappy Bane ripoff, Ustanak. He's a real pain in the ass, as we are soon going to find out. The good thing is that he's kinda dumb. We deal with the big guy and get to see Sherry's first meeting with Chris from her perspective. We already covered that, so let's move on to what happened afterwards. Everything seems fine and dandy for us as we join Sherry and Jake on their escape helicopter, just for Usternak to show up again and spoiling the fun. We deal with him, again, but encounter another problem. Our ride is totally fucked and we just managed to survive the resulting crash. Ugh, that doesn't look good. But don't worry, Sherry is fine. Turns out that her daddy gave her a parting gift back in Resident Evil 2. The G-Virus is still dormant in her body, giving her Wolverine-like healing abilities. Sweet. But what happens next? Well, Jake and Sherry have some fun in the snow, fighting Javos, sledding and riding snowmobiles to escape an avalanche. As you can probably tell, I really sucked at this part. I sucked so hard, the game took pity on me and gave me flying abilities to finally beat that part. Team Jake eventually ends up in a spooky cave where they run into Usternak again. He has a drill now. Great. This part is actually pretty cool, since you need to sneak around Usternak to prevent you from receiving a good drilling.
Nice.
Nevertheless, Sherry and Jake have to eventually deal with him again. We make our escape just for Ada showing up again, revealing one of the big twists of the game.
Albert Wesker was a colossal imbecile, a fool who tried to destroy the world. He was also your father.
What?
Which makes you heir to a very special blood type.
Dum dum dum. Usternak also shows up again, knocking out our heroes, taking them out of the game for a while. Don't worry, we will soon pick back up with Chris. But first, there are two more protagonists in need of introduction. We make a little time jump again, this time forward to the 29th of June, the day before the Chinese terror attack. We reunite with our favorite Secret Service agent and my personal man crush, Leon Scott Kennedy. Leon is tasked with protecting the US President, Adam Benford, as he is holding a speech at Tall Oaks Ivy University. We join Leon properly as he's about to shoot and kill the President. Don't worry, Leon didn't turn heel. The President, together with most of the population of Tall Oaks, fell victim to a C-virus outbreak. We are introduced to Helena Harper, another Secret Service agent, and she tells us that she knows more about the virus outbreak, but only is going to tell us more if we get her to the Tall Oaks Cathedral. And look, it's everyone's favorite Resident Evil 4 character, Ingrid Hannigan. Come on, don't hide your feelings. You know it's true.
Nice.
We now join Leon and Helena on their spooky adventure through the Ivy University and the Tall Oaks subway tunnels. You can already tell that this campaign tries to stick true to the series' survival horror roots. Just look at that lightning strike effect and that use of shadows. Mwah! Beautiful. Leon and Helena still have to deal with C-virus zombies, but these guys are more of the shambling and mumbling kind. After taking a stroll down Tall Oaks Memory Lane, our heroes manage to hold themselves up with some survivors, and for a change, receive some good news. A bus is coming to get them, to take them to the cathedral. First, they do run into some problems though. Oh look, it's a Fortnite fan!
He's fat!
Our getaway vehicle crashes, and Team Leon has to make their way through the most spookiest place of them all, a cemetery.
Surprise, motherfucker!
See, I told you it's scary. Helena sticks to her promise, and after playing with some statues and bells, we end up in a secret lab under the cathedral. This is a Resident Evil game, you didn't really think that there would not be a secret underground lab. Not only do we find a weird videotape of Ada Wong's birth, what the fuck, but we also run into Helena's sister Deborah. She doesn't feel too good though and decides to take a nap in a cozy cocoon. We know what that means. Deborah mutates, but we're getting help from Ada Wong herself. I'm not sure if I can trust her regarding all the shady shit she did previously. She does help us taking down Deborah though. It's needless to say that this is my favorite boss fight in the whole game. I don't really know why. we eventually do learn who's actually responsible for the virus outbreak. The US National Security Advisor, Derek Clifford Simmons, hits us up, accusing us of being the perpetrators. But that's only partially true. Helena did breach the president's security, leading to him being infected. But she only did so because Simmons abducted Deborah, blackmailing Helena into doing so. But why would he do that? Turns out that Simmons is the leader of the so-called family, a shadow government type organization responsible for the creation of the C-virus. He wanted the president dead since Benford planned to reveal the truth about the first T-virus outbreak and the destruction of Raccoon City, which Simmons coincidentally was responsible for too. With no evidence to prove their innocence, all Leon and Helena can do is part ways with Ada, watch on as Tall Oaks is nuked, and ask Hunnigan to fake their deaths to follow Simmons to China. Well, now we pretty much covered all the events prior to the main part of the game, with one exception, but I want to save that for a little longer. I will also end part 1 of this review here, since I don't want this video to be an hour long and there is still a lot of ground to cover. What happens to our heroes next? Well, you'll have to check out the next video to find out.